It's been just over a year since I first drove the Lamborghini Huracan on the twisty Spanish roads and flat out on the Ascari race circuit. Yes, its performance impressed me, but I was really surprised at just how livable it was compared to its predecessor. But would you really want to drive that car every day? Well, we're gonna put the Lamborghini Huracan to its greatest challenge yet, my daily commute. So here I am, stuck in traffic, which is how I spend a lot of my day. Except now I look completely awesome because I'm driving a Lamborghini. As a professional vehicle reviewer, I can tell you that the Lamborghini Huracan is much worse than the Honda Accord. At least when it comes to sight lines. I mean, you really can't see all that well out of this thing. Although on the plus side, it's kind of like a privacy screen. It actually blocks other people from looking at you and you don't have to make eye contact because, you know, I don't have to look over to know that they're already looking at me. So sitting in traffic gives you a lot of time to fiddle with all the buttons in here. And if you've driven a modern Audi, a lot of the information and the way it works is familiar. Despite looking like a fighter jet in here, the gauges are all very easy to understand, although they do have a very funny way of spelling gasoline. Something that's really taken a while to get a handle on are the turn signals. There are no stocks on the side here. There's just this tiny little button in the middle. And the same thing goes for the windshield wipers. There are buttons on this side of the steering wheel. But I guess with these banana-sized shift paddles on the side, there really is no other room for stocks. And did I mention there are no cup holders? And while I'm discussing the interior, I should point out that the seats are sort of a paradox. They're not overly comfy, and I keep thinking that when I first sat on them, these are not going to be good for a long period of time, but I've been sitting in them for half a day now, and I don't feel tired at all. They're actually quite nice. And of course, I have to point out the styling of this interior. I mean, it looks absolutely ridiculous. Although I have to say, if I'm going to order a Lamborghini Huracan, this is how I want it. I don't want people thinking that, oh, it shares parts with an Audi R8. I mean, this looks nothing like any other car. This looks insane. So crawling along here, I'm sure you've noticed I'm not doing a lot of this. And that's because this car has a new 7-speed dual clutch transmission, and it makes it so smooth. You can just cruise along in traffic normally. If you want, you can even just like lift your foot off the throttle and it'll just sort of creep along, just like my dad's Buick Regal does. I have to point out the anima switch that's right here in the middle of the steering wheel, which, by the way, is kind of a terrible location for it. But aside from that, you can choose from 3 different driving modes, and that controls everything from the steering response, throttle response, transmission, to even the magnetic ride suspension. So I'm not going to deal with Corsa or the track mode. We certainly don't need that for what you're looking at here. Strada mode is definitely the most comfortable here. The exhaust, you can't hear it, it's very quiet. The suspension is quite smooth, and I'm just sort of sailing along here in the bumper-to-bumper traffic. Strada mode will also keep you in the highest gear possible, and that's designed for fuel efficiency. You are supposed to be able to get about 16 miles per gallon combined in this car, but don't count on it. You can, of course, switch it over to sport mode, and that really wakes the exhaust up, and it holds the transmission until about 4,000 RPM, even under light throttle. So, you know, is driving around town at 4,000 RPM kind of a douchebag thing to do? Well, I think that if you were in my position right now, you'd be doing a lot less judging and a lot more of this. But if you do enough of that, you'll be looking to fill up with 94 octane pretty often. Now, the good thing is this car has a feature that will actually notify you when you're low on gas, and then at that same time, it will ask you if you actually want to drive to the nearest gas station, and it'll give you navigation instructions. When you do pull into that gas station or any other parking lot with a nice steep incline to it, you'll be really glad that this car has an airlift front suspension. It'll actually raise the front axle by a couple of inches. And that is a great feature that actually stays on after you've turned the car off. regardless of the added height, I'm confident this car would still not make it into my office's underground parking garage. Filling up the Huracan isn't going to completely drain your wallet, but I'm sure you've heard stories about how maintenance on pricey Italian exotics can pretty much bankrupt you. But honestly, the car costs $240,000. If you can't afford a pricey oil change, well, maybe you should just stick with the Corvette. So let's recap. If you buy a Lamborghini Huracan, every morning you will wake up all of your neighbors because it's so loud. So they will not only be insanely jealous of you, but they will now also be sleep deprived. You'll have to take the long way everywhere because shortcuts might wind you up in a construction zone or on some crappy roads. And when you do get to the office, well, you won't be able to get into your underground parking garage, and it's not even 9 a.m. But the good news is, for the rest of that commute, you will absolutely look like a badass, and maybe, just maybe, today is the day traffic isn't so bad.